Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Gopi Janam Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Gopi Janam Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtotarashata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtotarashata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Goshyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Mathura Vrindavana Dhama Ki Jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dhama Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dhama Ki Jai. Ganga Mayi Ki Jai. Yamuna Mayi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Tyler, could you grab me the book? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 10. We're actually reading from text number 29. Yeah, he read a number of verses yesterday, so.
Should I take that down?
I guess you could, yeah.
Yeah, we can chant this one and then you can go all the way, you can get the few of the same.
Okay, we could chant this one. Vritram Abhyadravach Chatram Asuranika Utapai Paryastam Ojasa Rajan Krudho Rudra Ivantakam Vritram Abhyadravachatram Asuranika Utapai Paryastam Ojasa Rajan Krudho Rudra Ivantakam Vritram Abhyadravachatram Asuranika Utapai Paryastam Ojasa Rajan Krudho Rudra Ivantakam Vritram Abhyadravachatram Asuranika Utapai Paryastam Ojasa Rajan Krudho Rudra Ivantakam
Vitram Abhyadravachatram Ashuranika Utapai Paryastam Ojasa Rajan Krudho Rudra Ivantakam
Okay. Yeah. So 29, I'll just chant myself. Te sva prayasam vitatham nirikshya harava bhakta hata yuddha darpaha palayanaya jimukhe visrajya patim manaste dadurattasaraha. Okay, word for word. They, the demons. Svaprayasam, their own endeavors. Vitatham, fruitless. Nirikshya, seeing. Haro abhaktaha, the asuras, those who are not devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hata, defeated. Yudha darpaha, their pride in fighting. Palayanaya, for leaving the battlefield. Ajimukhe, from the in the very beginning of the battle. Visrajya, leaving aside. Patim, their commander. Vritrasura. Manaha, their minds. Te, all of them. Dadhuhu, gave. Attasaraha, whose prowess was taken away. Translation: the asuras, who are never devotees of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, lost their pride in fighting when they found all their endeavors futile. Leaving aside their leader, even in the very beginning of the fight, they decided to flee because all their prowess had been taken away by the enemy. So I'll read a few verses. Text 30. Seeing his army broken and all the asuras, even those known as great heroes, fleeing the battlefield out of intense fear, Vritrasura, who was truly a great-minded hero, smiled and spoke the following words. Next text. According to his position and the time and circumstances, Vritrasura, the hero among heroes, spoke words that were much to be appreciated by thoughtful men. He called to the heroes of the demons, O Viprachiti, O Namuchi, O Puloma, O Maya, Anarva, and Shambhara, please hear me and do not flee. Vritrasura said, all living entities who have taken birth in this material world must die. Surely no one in this world has found any means to be saved from death. Even Providence has not provided a means to escape it. Under the circumstances, death being inevitable, if one can gain promotion to the higher planetary systems and be always celebrated here by dying a suitable death, what man will not accept such a glorious death? Purport. If by dying one can be elevated to the higher planetary systems and be ever famous after his death, who is so foolish that he will refuse such a glorious death? Similar advice was also given by Krishna to Arjuna. My dear Arjuna, the Lord said, do not desist from fighting. If you gain victory in the fight, you will enjoy a kingdom, and even if you die, you will be elevated to the heavenly planets. Everyone should be ready to die while performing glorious deeds. A glorious person is not meant to meet death like cats and dogs. Om ajnanatimidandasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha. Nama shreshtam manamapi shachiputramatra swarupam rupam tasyagrajam murupurim maturim goshtavatim radha kundam giribaramaho radhika madhavasham prapto yasya pratita kripaya shri gurum tam natosmi vandeham shri guru shri yutapadakamalam shri gurun vaishnavamsha shri rupam sagrajatam sahagana raghunathanvitam tam sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhi Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the fight between the demigods and demons, headed by Vritrasura, is now has just begun and is now reaching a turning point, because the demons who were fighting with Vritrasura, although they were, you could say, very heroic in the sense that they were great fighters and they were very strong. When they saw the prowess of the demigods in fighting, and when they saw that all their weapons against the demigods were defeated, they became very fearful. And so even the greatest heroes on the demon side, like Vritrasura calls out, he's Viprachiti, Namuchi, Puloma, Maya, Anarva, and Shambhara. Even the greatest heroes on the demon side, they fled, seeing the power of the demigods. But Vritrasura, he didn't flee. He stayed and to fight the battle to whatever end the battle came to. So this kind of highlights the difference between righteous and unrighteous people. Or you could say noble or ignoble people. Unrighteous people generally talk a big talk, so to speak. They may talk about how, for example, the people, nowadays, they may talk about how religious people or, spiritual people are weak-hearted, weak-minded. They need a crutch. They can't face the world. And that they themselves, they don't need that crutch because they can face life head on, and they, they're strong like this. So the tendency for demons or for materialists is that they feel that they're in a very safe position. Like in the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, he speaks from the perspective of a demoniac person. He says, Siddhoham balavan sukhi, that I am perfect and I am powerful and I'm very happy. So this is how the demons feel. Not necessarily these demons. Of course, at this point they're running away, so they don't feel perfect or powerful or very happy. But materialists in general, they feel like they can accomplish anything. They don't feel like they need any kind of shelter. But actually, everybody in this world has shelter, whether you're taking shelter of Krishna or something else. And the reason that they feel sheltered is because actually they've taken shelter of their own lust and anger and greed. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Ahankaram balam darapam, kamam krodam cha samshritaha, mamatma paradeheshu pradvishanto bhyasuyakaha. That the demoniac people, they take shelter of false ego, of vanity, of their own so-called strength, of lust, of anger. And because they've taken shelter of these things and they feel some little, you could say, iota of protection, then what do? They just blaspheme others. They feel like they're in a very high and safe position, and therefore from there they blaspheme others. The general tendency in this world is that people feel like they can do whatever they want, because the atmosphere is so saturated with these different things, ahankaram, balam, darpam, kamam, krodam, etc. Lust, anger, greed, false ego, all these different things. That if one, you could say, goes with the flow, so if one indulges their false ego, if one indulges their anger, if one indulges their lust, if one indulges their, whatever desires they have, then they feel like they're, just like if in a river, if you're swimming against the current, it's very difficult. But if you're swimming with the current, it's very easy, you go very fast. So the whole world is revolving around lust, practically speaking. And so people who, you could say, indulge that lust, or lusty persons, because they feel like for the moment they're going with the current, they feel like they're going, it feels like things are okay. Like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, godless people or demoniac people, they feel that there's no God, that the world is just going on basically by sex, because people are reproducing like this, and there's nothing else. There's nothing else besides this. There's no soul. There's no Krishna. There's no transcendental anything. It's all just material. And so, when they see people who are going against the grain, who are, they don't even really have to be saying anything against, their own lifestyle. But just to see them, as you could say, an attack on their, lusty desires. So they blaspheme. They blaspheme others. But material nature, inevitably, just the nature of material nature, is that inevitably it bursts this bubble. They're in a bubble of safety, where they feel like they can do anything they want, but then material nature naturally bursts their bubble. Because it's everything's temporary. The whole world is temporary. Everything that they're using to indulge their desires is temporary. Their desires are temporary. Their body is temporary. The whole thing is temporary. Labdhva sudurlabhamidam bahusambhavante manusham arthadam anityam api hadiraha. This human form of life is temporary. I'll get back to that verse, but that was a significant part. That it's temporary. So when push comes to shove, and Maya bursts their bubble, their whole world collapses. And actually, they suffer a lot. It's not that they're so strong and then, something doesn't go their way and then they can just face it. Their whole world collapses. There's a Vedic kind of, a little anecdote, I guess, where a man, he was, it was a yogi. It was a yogi, and somehow or other, he was doing some sacrifice, and his cloth caught on fire, and he started burning, and he was running around, and he was screaming, "The world's on fire!" Because his body, that was his world, from his perspective, the world was on fire, because without his body, he had no experience of the world. So, people who are materialistic or who have nothing but their material desires have no foundation, they have no purpose. And so when things don't go their way, or when material nature inevitably frustrates them, they really suffer. And so we see that people, for example, they lose all their money, or whatever, their wife leaves them, and they commit suicide. Just recently we were driving to the Friday program in Chula Vista, and there was a man in his 60s, and he was hanging off the overpass, ready to jump. And there was there was all police. They shut down the whole freeway, and there was all police there and ambulance, and they put out these big inflatable things to so he could fall on them, and eventually he jumped and he died. So this is because when people's lusty desires are frustrated, they feel like they have no purpose. They feel like they have nothing to live for. But for the devotees, it's the opposite. For the devotees, any situation you put them in, their entire frame of reference, their whole purpose, the way they see the world is completely different, and therefore they don't have this kind of suffering. They don't have this kind of fear. There's this verse, Narayana prasarve nakudashtana bibhyati svargapavarga narekeshu apitulyartha darshinaha. That whether a devotee is in heaven or in hell or in the spiritual world or the material world, wherever, he's equipoised. He sees no difference between all these different things, because his only desire, his only, you could say, perspective is, how can I serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this situation? And also they see all these different things. They see heaven and hell and the material world and the spiritual world from their proper perspective. And they understand just basic facts about life. This verse, text 32, the last one that I read, Jata simrityur dhruva eva sarvata pratikriya yasya nacheha klipta loko yashash chata tato yadi hyamam ko nama mrityam navranita yuktam. This first line, at least, is very similar to a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, which says, Jatasya hi dhruvam mrityor, dhruvam janma mritasya cha, tasmada pariharyarte, natvam shochitam arhasi. Where, in this verse, I should explain this one first. Vritrasura, he's saying, all living entities who have taken birth in this material world must die. Surely no one has found any means to be saved from death. And so in that verse in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is basically saying the same thing. That for one who has been born, death is a fact. And for one who has died, birth is a fact. And then he says to Arjuna, he says, therefore, you're going to have to fight. Inevitably, you're going to have to discharge your duty. So just don't lament about it. Just do what you have to do. And don't think about, whether it's, good or bad or this or that, or how it benefits you. You're going to die anyway. All these people are going to die anyway, and then you're going to be born again. So you do your duty, and you serve and Krishna's saying you serve me, and everything will be fine. So the fact is that death is coming to everybody, whether you're a materialist or a spiritualist or something in between, whatever it is, death is coming. And therefore, the devotees, knowing this, they don't lament for the things of this world. They don't lament for, material gain. They don't lament for, all these different things, for the body, for their possessions, because they understand that it's all temporary anyway. They're going to be taken away anyway. Now, of course, it's not that devotees completely reject everything which is material, but devotees see it in its proper light. There's this verse, Dharma svanashtapum sam vishvaksena katasyat notpadiyed yadi ratim shrama eva hi kevalam. That anything that performing one's duty, one may perform their duty very well, their varnashram duty or whatever duties they have, they may perform it very well, perfectly. But if by performing this duty, whatever it is, they don't awaken attraction for Vishvaksena Kata, for hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then whatever duty they perform is Shrama Eva Hi Kevalam. It's a complete waste of time. It's useless, actually. And in many ways, it's worse than useless, actually, because it takes them away from that. Not only do they not make any progress toward that, but it actually, it ends up entangling them more in the material world. And so Maya is very strong. Maya is extremely strong, and therefore 99.99999 to infinity% of people, practically speaking, are engaged in Shrama Eva Hi Kevalam. They're engaged in basically wasting time because they don't know the value of the human form of life. They don't know the value of human consciousness. They don't know the value of time even. And so there's this verse I quoted earlier. Labdva sudurlabh hamidam bahusam bhavante manushim arthadam anityam api hadiraha. Turnam yateta napatet anumrityu yavan nishaya sayavashyap kalu sarvatasyat. That having obtained this human form of life, which is very rare, it's only obtained after going through 8.4 million different species of life. Manusham arthadam anityam api hadiraha. Although it's temporary, although it's anitya, it's arthadam. It affords one the opportunity to obtain the highest benefit. So therefore, one who is intelligent, while their body is still alive, it's temporary, but while it's still alive, one who is intelligent uses it to its highest benefit, which is serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, chanting the Supreme Lord's name, etc. Because they know that at any moment this body may die. Oh yeah, and they don't engage in sense gratification because this sense gratification is available in all different species of life. Whether one wants, me and Francisco, we were in La Jolla yesterday, taking a little japa walk, and you see it's quite funny if you think about it, because you have these big, beautiful modern houses on one cliff, and then right next to it you have all these birds with their nests right there on the cliff, and a bunch of them. It's like a neighborhood of birds. And then on the other side, you just look a little bit more in the distance, and you have all these big houses. And if you think about it, it's the same thing. I think Balaram Prabhu, one time we were there, and Balaram Prabhu made the comment that all these birds are the in their past lives, there were these people living in these houses. I didn't actually realize until yesterday that they actually have their nests there. I thought they were all just hanging out there, but they actually, if you look, they all have their nests there. It's like a bunch of nests. So it's the same thing. So if one wants to have, live on a cliff and have a view of the ocean and just, not do anything with their human consciousness besides eat, sleep, mate, and defend, then the material nature makes an arrangement whereby they can take birth as a bird or something like that. Because they don't need the human form of life. The purpose of the human form of life is to elevate one's consciousness and make advancement toward going back home, back to Godhead. But if one doesn't use it, if one just squanders it, then the material nature says, okay, fine, you don't need this body, you're not using it, so just take another body, take an animal's body. So, but yeah, Maya is very strong, so 99.9% of people, this is their conception of life. And so in this last verse, Vitrasra, he's saying, all living entities who have taken birth in this material world must die. Surely no one in this world has found any means to be saved from death. Even Providence has not provided a means to escape it. So everybody has to die. Everybody must die. This body is temporary. And then Vitrasra says, under the circumstances, death being inevitable, if one can gain promotion to the higher planetary systems and be always celebrated here by dying a suitable death, what man will not accept such a glorious death? So death is coming anyway, so we may as well die for something good, Vitrasra is saying. We may as well die for something glorious and achieve glory by our death. So a way that one can apply this to Krishna consciousness is that there are so many people who have the human form of life, who are spending time working and suffering. So suffering is inevitable, difficulty is inevitable, work is inevitable. So glorious are those who can see past the veil of Maya and work for Krishna and sacrifice their life for Krishna, not necessarily in giving up their body or in dying, but if one can sacrifice their material life for the sake of serving Krishna, for the sake of their highest benefit, then that's very glorious. Because everybody's engaging in some austerity. People, I mean, it's brought up practically in every class, how people, they go to work very early in the morning, and they work all day. Sometimes they're sitting down all day, and they have back problems and circulation problems in their legs. And they have to go to the doctor because they're sitting down so much. Or whatever it is, Or, working like whatever, construction jobs or, difficult jobs or, factory jobs. Very difficult. They're engaging in a lot of difficulty. But if they just had faith in Krishna, that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that if they give their life to Krishna, then their lives will be successful, then they'll actually be very happy. They'll be doing the same work, but they won't be suffering. They'll actually be very happy. Because Krishna consciousness isn't it's a sacrifice, but it's not a difficult sacrifice. What's that verse? Vishyavani vartante nirahara siddehinaha rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishva nivartate. That one can give up a lower taste by accepting a higher taste. So if one has if one is in a situation where they're not happy, where they're suffering, it's very easy to give it up if they accept a situation which is very pleasing, which is very happy. And so although Krishna consciousness requires that one give up certain things, that one give up, for example, intoxication, illicit sex, meat eating, and gambling, amongst other things, by accepting the higher taste of devotional service, then these things don't become an austerity, and actually they become just byproducts they just become things which they naturally don't want to do. The four regulative principles and all these different things, they're just basically things that one would give up anyway if they were actually relishing Krishna consciousness. And so by giving them up, our minds are more clear, and so that we can actually get to that point. So Krishna consciousness, although it's a sacrifice, although there is still suffering, devotees still suffer, it's not suffering like the materialists suffer. Suffering is inevitable, death is inevitable, so may as well suffer for Krishna, or die for Krishna, or just give one's whole life for Krishna. Because everything else is just a waste of time. It doesn't really get anybody anywhere. It's like running on the treadmill and drinking corn oil at the same time or something. It doesn't get anybody anywhere. So, therefore, everybody is urged as much as possible to give things up for Krishna and to come closer to him and serving him with mind, body, and words. So I'll stop there and we can have questions and discussion. Unless there's nothing.
What verse did you read up to just now?
32.
I think maybe you could just read until the end of the chapter. I think it's all no purpose.
I think we're almost there, right? There's one more?
Oh yeah, there's just one verse, yeah.
One I wanted to talk about. So go ahead.
Okay, we can. I'll just read the end of the chapter. It's just one verse with no purport. Okay, text 33. Dvosamata vihimrityudura. No. Dvosamata vihimrit. No. What is that? Anyway, there are two ways to meet a glorious death, and both are very rare. One is to die after performing mystic yoga, especially Bhakti yoga, by which one can control the mind and living force and die absorbed in thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The second is to die on the battlefield, leading the army and never showing one's back. These two kinds of death are recommended in the Shastras as glorious. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 6th canto, 10th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Battle Between the Demigods and Vritrasura.
One thing I can notice is the way there's the different personalities, say Indra and Vritrasura, just to focus on those two, they keep going in and out of their actual nature. Like I was just reading ahead, and Vritrasura, he's chastising the demons for running, and then he's chastising the demigods for killing him from the back. And then he becomes completely furious. He forgets his nature as a devotee inside, and he becomes super angry at the demigods. And so there's this, this is part of the theme of this. Like Indra, of course, we know that he's going to go, lose it and become like a demon, right? And do something that he then regrets. Oh my God! And then 10 minutes later, do the same thing. So this is, I always think, well, this is, it's an example. Even the head of the leader of heaven, the head honcho in heaven, is suffering. First of all, he's very embarrassed. He was so embarrassed because he couldn't control his senses, so he got cursed, and then so he has all these eyes all over his body. But everyone knows what they were before, so it's embarrassing. And then he, but then he looked like for this Govardhan Lila. He becomes completely contrite and he prays to Krishna, please forgive me, and he bathes Krishna with the water from my rabata and everything, you know. And then, when Krishna visits with the queen, I forget the queen he was with.
Satyabhama.
Satyabhama. To get the earrings, to return the earrings, she says, oh, look at all these nice parijata trees. You know, oh, we'll get you a whole tree. So he takes a tree and he says, no, you can't take a tree. This is Krishna, this Supreme Personality of Godhead. But he's now in his role of, protecting this. And there's a little battle there. And Shukadev even gets angry at him. Shukadev says, what is this Indra? You know, he can't keep... So this is like a apotheosis of this back and forth. And I was reading ahead, and Vritrasura completely loses it, you know, in the next thing. So this is I think one of the things I keep coming back to this is that the pull of the material of Indraloka and the heavenly planets, and having lost that, they want to gain it back, is so great that it covers your actual nature. And even Vritrasura, and his prayers, the Lord utter his prayers, you know, and then you really see who he really is. But it's just an example of how difficult it is to maintain your, you know, actual devotional mood through thick and thin, through all of the vicissitudes of the material world. Because suddenly there can be tremendous, cataclysm. And then you're tested. Can we still keep our equipoise in that and still chant Hare Krishna? You know, it's going to lose it. So anyway, I'm sorry to...
No, that was nice. Thank you, Prabhu.
I had something on the last text, but I had a question about it was a really nice example with the treadmill, drinking the corn oil. So if the treadmill runs on ethanol, do you think there's a net gain there? You know, corn-based ethanol, do you think?
What was the significance of the corn oil?
Why corn and not peanut?
Yeah, because corn could be a fuel. That's what they make ethanol out of, which could fuel the treadmill. That was abstracted. But I'm glad we finished the chapter, and I don't know much about the Bhagavatam, but this section is my favorite section so far. It's really awesome. There's a great battle, and he's by himself fighting all the demigods, and he has such an awesome attitude, and he's also really, really epic. You know, he's like the villain of villains. Like, it'd be really awesome to see like a painting of him, or some kind of rendition.
There's paintings.
Yeah, or like a 3D model running through a city. Something. It'd be really cool to just see how big someone who can swallow the world is. So this is glorious death. I was so interested in this last text where it says, if you die a glorious death, you're celebrated. You're always celebrated. So who would not accept a glorious death? And then defines this is a glorious death. You can do it two ways. You can die performing mystic yoga, and then he highlights Bhakti yoga, which is cool because the Bhagavatam is glorifying Bhakti yoga, which we've dedicated our lives to. And then it says, or the second is to die on the battlefield, leading the army and never showing one's back. And that's it. These are the deaths that are recommended in the Shastras as glorious. Interesting. I wouldn't have picked those. I mean, Bhakti Yoga, I get it. But to be glorified, to die practicing Bhakti Yoga and celebrated, always celebrated. And then also the second one, wow. So if you go into the army head on in battle, don't look back and do your duty, you die a glorious death. So I just didn't know if you know much about this or what we can talk about. And in fact, also he says mystic yoga. What do I have to perform mystic yoga, especially Bhakti Yoga? Is there something with that?
Well, yeah. I mean, if somebody's a very... I mean, it's not necessarily talking about valiant heroes are often glorified because of their bravery. And so if they give up their life for the selfless, the theme with all these is that they're selfless, is that somebody's putting somebody else's needs or some other cause beyond, above themselves.
And you'll get promoted by doing this, he said earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, so Kshatriyas, if they die in battle, then they go to the heavenly planets. And so, but yeah, I mean, these are mostly just kind of like, material kind of pious things. And so Vritrasura's, because that's the platform really that the demons are on. And so he's saying, come on, let's go, let's come fight and go to the heavenly planets, or whatever. He's not. Yeah, they keep running. Yeah.
But then, if we die in Bhakti Yoga, we're glorified, but we're glorified by the Vaishnavas for the nice life that we led. Or it's not material glorification, right, per se.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess if you're talking about bhakti, then yeah. Yeah, generally, I mean, materialists wouldn't really glorify, somebody who gives their life for Krishna. It's not really something that they're into. But yeah, the Vaishnavas glorify, but of course, we're not really like looking for that, though. We're not really like, I want to die in Krishna consciousness so that all the Vaishnavas glorify me.
That's why this is confusing, because that's spiritual, dying in Bhakti Yoga, and this other part's material, but it's framed, like you said, with this material.
Well, I think when it's talking about, oh, you'll be glorified, it just means that it's glorious, so you should do it.
And if they're looking for glory,
Yeah.
that's fine. Okay, Juan, did you have something? Last question.
No.
Anything on Zoom? Okay. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Tyler.